What's good, guys? Welcome back to another NGD rant. So today we will be covering the newest Godzilla film to come out of Toho Studios, which has been dormant, I like to say, for around 7 years after Shin Godzilla. It would have been interesting to see a Shin Godzilla 2, but they didn't end up going that way. And instead, ignored the franchise for a couple years, decided to make that silent legendary money, and then they just kind of, because I think they got, royalties somewhere in there, so they kind of, cheat on the Godzilla franchise just a little. And right now, okay, this teaser, and apparently I'm the first one to admit this, because it doesn't seem like anybody else wants to, but this teaser didn't give us anything, actually, really. Didn't give us much. I've learned 90% of the things I have about this Godzilla through the SH1 Stars release, which came out literally a day after, which is kind of surprising, actually. So, first, right, these dorsal plates look almost too sharp, way too sharp, actually. The top of them is extended, and it's a new look. It's a new look. I'm assuming this is the same Godzilla from Godzilla vs. Gigan Rex. Now, I'm not too sure about that, but both of them look fairly similar. Now, I watched the Dangerville episode, and this dude had come up with a crazy theory about how Toho's, restarting Godzilla and, restarting the whole franchise, right? So this is, the 1954 version, but it's not. He was like, well, -1 is they're restarting the clock. It's no, -1 means, because this happened, right after the war, this Godzilla, that means, they went from 0, which is having nothing because of the war, to -1, Godzilla coming literally right after the war, which makes their situation even worse. That's what it means. Well, then again, I could also be wrong, but for the most part, yeah, that's what I believe. Now, judging from this teaser, and I think we can agree with, the B-Sub podcast, is that this Godzilla isn't going to be as big as Legendary, and they made a good point in that when something is too big, right, like Legendary Godzilla, you don't really get to have, horror. You don't get to be scared of the kaiju because they're so damn big, right? So it doesn't leave any intimacy. So you just kind of have kaiju destroying cities. There's no horror in it. They start fighting, right? And the thing about this is that they can still pull it off, but Legendary is just, after Godzilla 2014, Legendary realized where the money was big kaiju fights. Toho, I think. And honestly, depending on how this movie ends, I really, right now, I feel like Toho is better off making solo Godzilla movies than making another era, right? Like the Heisei era, the Showa era, stuff like that, where they make, because there's a repeating pattern with literally all of them, actually, including Legendary. It's that, right, the first movie is great, phenomenal. Then then the quality just starts slowly decreasing, right? Slowly decreasing as Toho becomes lazier. Toho and Legendary become lazier and lazier and lazier, to soon enough where the movies are so bad, people just stop watching it, right? Look, right? You can be received poorly, but if you get that bank, they're gonna make a second, okay? It's like the Trolls franchise. That first movie sucked ass, but they made bank from the little kids, and well, the rest is history. Now I got a Trolls 3 somewhere, anyways, right? So with the way they've been going, I wouldn't really. Now I'm not saying I wouldn't like to see like an era with my own eyes, right? With my years of being on this earth, I would like to see it, but will we? Will it? I'm not too sure. And honestly, bro. Okay, well, back to that intimacy thing, right? With legendary kaijus being so big, right? I think the last time we really felt like some sort of because really, the only reason like Geo was there, her and Kong really didn't have intimacy. Nothing. Gia never felt. How do I say it? She was a good plot point, but she never felt in danger, right? She never had a certain point where she got like knocked into a building by Godzilla or something. She just didn't, right? She was just around Kong most of the time. There just wasn't any intimacy. There wasn't any horror. There wasn't any stakes, right? If like nobody died, and that's what I like to call the Jurassic effect. It's where none of the stakes like matter, because there are none, because that was messy, sorry. There are no stakes because no one dies. No one feels in danger of anything because there's no intimacy, because these kaijus are 1,000 feet tall, right? And yeah, big city fights, whatever, cool, right? Dinosaurs. Kaijus, Godzillas, they only get bigger, okay? So if this is true, where this Godzilla is 150 feet tall, that is a good thing, actually, because we get more intimacy, right? We can have this Godzilla, I don't know, because this Godzilla is smaller, it can actually, like, see humans, because, look, right? You get a Hammond collection action figure, for example. You put it on the floor, stand right next to it. You're still not in scale of Godzilla. Let's say that figure was, 6 foot tall human, and you are Godzilla. You are still not at the scale. It's like, you gotta get like an 8 foot tall person to actually be like in scale with that figure. So, and that just puts like into a relative size of how big these dinosaurs like really are. And I keep saying dinosaurs, sorry. Kaiju. Like how big these kaiju really are. Well, even then, dinosaurs are kind of getting bigger. Did you see the Giga Dominion? It was way too big. Say it with there's dinosaurs. But anyways, right? I need some water, sorry. Now, what do I expect from this movie? Honestly, right? This could actually be a mixture of both ideas. Both reasons, right? Maybe this could be a reboot of Godzilla, and this could be like, or maybe this one could be like, if I explain this well, I'm gonna have the teaser, the one they give us nothing. I'm gonna have this play silently in the background, maybe, right? This could actually be, if I'm looking at this correctly, because if they're like, okay, so pretty much, right? I think that this may very well be a remaster or new spin on or of the 1954 version of Godzilla, which honestly, I'm not too sure how to feel about that, because do we really need that? I think I like the idea of the 1954 version being the 1954 version. We don't need a remaster, because the 1954 version had meaning, like real, actual meaning to it. it wasn't no, Godzilla versus Ghidorah type shit. It was, don't mess with these atomic bombs, people. And adding a remaster on that already kind of ruined, right, all of these other movies already kind of ruined the legacy of the first. But if you remaster the first, it's gonna leave a giant stain, right? It's not gonna make the first feel special in a way, because and be honest, no American audience, which is currently Toho's, not focused really. They're not focusing on anything. They just want to get a bag, right? But their attention, most of them, if they're casual, if they're not hardcore Godzilla fans, they don't care for the first movie. And if you put a remaster on that movie and send it to American audiences, instead of letting them find their way back to the first, that's going to be not a good look, because these people are gonna, grow with the perception that, oh, well, Godzilla's always just been this evil fighting, giant monster, when its first movie was not that. It was not fighting people. It was attacking as more of a symbol than it was a dinosaur, dinosaur kaiju, whatever, right? And, I could also be wrong, because most of the time I am. Now, we move on to the next thing, because I literally didn't do a rant on this. It was during my dry spell. I just didn't upload for like a month and a half. Godzilla and Kong New Empire. Whoa. What do I think of this villain? This is... Oh, I don't know, man. This is not exactly This isn't something that I am happy about. I feel like this giant monkey feels almost like a weaker version of Kong. Now, I am assuming this happens after Godzilla versus King Kong, which, if it is, this monkey better have some crazy ass abilities, bro. It better have the most glamorous, most stupendous abilities of all time, because I will not be accepting a weaker Kong, right? Because Kong, be honest with yourselves, he has no abilities. So if this monkey has no abilities and Kong is stronger, why do we need King Kong versus Godzilla, right? I'd like to imagine that like, I don't know, it's like a really old Kong, like whatever, man. But this better have the most stupendous abilities, because if it has none, that would make for a 10-minute movie, right? Because we know in this movie, with a pattern going on, that Legendary has started caring more about big old fight scenes and CGI effects and all that stuff, instead of characters that we focus on and love. And actually the thing kind of centers around, because look, right? See, in Godzilla 2014, that was a great movie, right? And I liked the way that they portrayed Ford Brody, but the movie kind of centered on him instead of Godzilla. I feel like there needs to be an equal thing, right? There needs to be an equal balance of focus throughout the movie. I feel like, the main character's story should center around Godzilla and what Godzilla's doing, not what Godzilla previously did, which is Madison Russell, right? Because her story kind of centered around Godzilla. But the thing is, these main characters don't get enough screen time, because like I said before, these fight scenes are now just kind of by themselves, and we barely get to see any of the main characters. Like I said, I think there needs to be a balance. Now, the Godzilla 2014 final battle, was it fully fulfilling? No, not really, but also, you know, it's because in Godzilla 2014, like I said, the story revolved around Ford Brody, and you know, the whole thing kind of got, how do I say it? The whole fight scene kind of got interrupted by the Halo scene. But anyways, okay, in this movie there needs to be a balance, right? There needs to be a balance in these creatures, and we haven't really gotten that ever, actually. So it may be a little bit of a daunting task that I'm putting on Legendary, but please, because, you know, these characters, right, they give context, you know, they help us understand, but when you are stripping that away from us in order for some, and let's be honest, all these fights, right, because now that they're, you know, putting all the focus, they're not having the fights be as long, right? Because watch the Hong Kong scene. It went from pitch black, right, to, you know, 10 p.m. at night to 7 a.m. in the morning in 5-10 minutes. It was short, right? It wasn't exactly. And I had to remember because I had watched this movie literally 2 days ago when I had made that previous rant. I had watched the movie, and there was a certain point where, you know, Mechagodzilla had, like, awoken, right? So Kong was about to die. Mechagodzilla awoke, jumps out of the little hill, and it's morning. It went from night to morning in, like, 5 minutes. So it's either I'm tripping or the movie's tripping. So try to put a balance in between it and have it be, you know, realistic, because I'm sorry, but that fight had like 3-4. It wasn't enough to make it believable, right? That it went from night to morning in 5 minutes, right? And of course, that might be just me, you know, being, you know, special, right? But as I was saying before, we just need to have that balance, right? And same thing with Godzilla -1. You can't have Godzilla be the main character. Godzilla usually should be the antagonist, right? And if he's not the antagonist, he's definitely not the protagonist. I don't like him being the main character of a movie, which we need to have real people with real personality, right? Because, look, I'm not taking anything away from the kind of character and, you know, cocky, egotistical, but can still back it up type character they have going on in Legendary Godzilla. But we also need human characters to, you know, move the story along, because, you know, Legendary hasn't really been able to do that. It's either, right, they focus too much on the characters, right? And or they have these big old fight scenes that take away from what, you know, the character is doing. Like, for example, the King Kong and, Godzilla fight scene. Kong's crew, like, you know, Gigi, whatever her caretaker's name is, and that weird dude, they had all literally disappeared for 10, 15 minutes, hell, maybe even 20 minutes until, you know, Godzilla started getting his ass handed to him. And look, they popped back up. Like, they were gone for 90% of the fight and only appeared when you needed them. And, you know, there are certain characters that just like, why, you know? Anyways, right, I think that's the end of my rant because I need to go get to doing something. So, if you will please subscribe. We're at 90 subscribers. I'd like to get to 100 so y'all can get a special, right? And with that being said, goodbye, people.